Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Caroline Stevens, Seeking the Truth, and I'm live both on Facebook and on YouTube. So we've got the part 2 of a two-parter with John Brindley. For those on Facebook who missed part 1, it can be found on Seeking the Truth, the YouTube channel. Now, we're talking about Paul McCartney.
Yes.
We worked out that from part 1, the current Paul McCartney is not the original Paul McCartney. So that might be a bit of a revelation for people at home. Can you explain what his first wife said to him? We said Linda Eastman said, "You've got a secret, and we know what it is."
Well, we said that there is a complete contrast between his first two wives. Linda was a society photographer, and she knew things.
But with a famous name like Eastman, as in Kodak.
Yeah, and Paul reports, or Paul 2 reports, that Linda spoke to him and said, near the beginning of their relationship, "I know who you are and I know who you aren't," which means basically, and meant something specifically to him. I know that you are not Paul McCartney, not James Paul McCartney,
the original
of the Beatles, but you are the person who is taking the role of Paul McCartney now. So that was the perfect basis for Paul to form a very, very successful human relationship with Linda Eastman. And they were married for many years, and that book emphasizes
the memoirs of Billy Shears
were extremely happy.
It's by Thomas E. Harriet.
Yeah.
Harriet.
Yeah. And maybe we should explain that, because again, it's all to do with the mystery. People will be, or some people will certainly be aware of the concept that Illuminati, and we're talking about Illuminati, shadowy figures, people of the elite, people of knowledge above the normal knowledge of everyday people, have to, for some reason, display in plain sight the truth of what they've done. So, for instance, there were many sort of references to the Twin Towers years before
it actually happened. And that was in the Beatles music when this replica, the clone, would we call him a clone?
Oh, you could. What do you mean, Paul? Oh, no, I wouldn't call him a clone. No, no. But the truth of the matter is that they must tell you that this has happened. So they cannot replace Paul, put him forward in front of millions of people for 50 odd years, 53 years so far, without telling you. But at the same time,
they fluoridated our water and of the population.
Yeah, but there will be reference to that somewhere if you look hard enough for it. In this particular case, and this doesn't mean that this book is the only piece of truth or relative truth, because it is officially a work of fiction, because it has to be. Well, the point, we are talking about legal contracts that can't be, be ignored, and the truth cannot come out in its entirety until after this particular person passes on. But they are telling this. So Thomas E. Harriet is the author of the book, but the book is written in the first person, and that first person clearly is Paul, or Paul 2. However, Thomas E. Harriet does not confirm that he spoke with Paul, or that Paul is the author of it, because that would be against the legal contracts. Paul 2 is not able to tell you and I face to face, or in a news conference or whatever, the truth of what happened. Otherwise, he will be in defiance of the agreement that he took part in.
When he took over the role in the first place.
And this agreement would be shared with certain other people.
So they won't be able to say anything either.
I mean, he says it because there's a lot of questions to be answered really, and certain people this guy had to leave behind in his life. So in other words, he had a life, an identity before Paul, and certain people that he knew, he had to just leave them and just in a sense just disappear. Others had to be brought into the agreement, and when anyone asks, well, why would anyone agree to something like that? It isn't really a voluntary agreement. It isn't a sort of thing. Well, please come and help us on this. This. It's more or less a matter of life or death. What you are entering a contract, which is to say that if you are to ignore this contract, they can't. Your life would be in danger, basically.
Wow. Okay. So they've chosen somebody, and we were talking about if he's not a clone, they've chosen somebody who visually looks very similar.
Do you know what the fascinating thing is that originally the Billy Shepherd, let's call him that. That's one of his names, or Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots. Looks virtually
household name,
virtually nothing like Paul McCartney at all.
Wow.
It's just utterly ridiculous. However, what he did have was amazing skills in terms of he was a great musician. Now, a lot of people will be interested in the film, which is a about the Beatles. A young musician who is very, very talented. He can write songs for fun. He can sing them. He can perform, but he's not at the top of his game in terms of recognition. In fact, far from it. You appreciate that virtually 99% of musicians are never going to make it to the absolute top, and they're going to face on occasions the sheer hard reality that they're going to have to decide whether to continue or whether to go back to make some money some other honest way, some other less glamorous way of making money. And in the film, it
reminds me of people joining the European Union.
Everything reminds you of the European Union, doesn't it?
I must dream about the European Union.
This person in the film is jettisoned total obscurity into the shoes of a superstar. I don't want to ruin the film for people who haven't seen it, but I'm going to have to really to make my point. And I say this is for all intents and purposes a film, so there's a fantasy element to the story. What happens is this guy's involved in a car crash, and then there's this strange thing that happens to everybody else on the planet, and they cannot remember the Beatles. They can't remember any of their music, that they existed at all. They've been taken off the internet. They don't exist. However, this man who was, who knew all the songs, he still has total recall of this music. And when he starts singing these songs, people around him go, "My goodness, can we hear that again? That's incredible. You shouldn't be just performing in front of a few people, in pubs and clubs and stuff like that. You should be a world superstar with music. Have you got any other songs like that?" And he starts performing these. He signs a contract with the music industry, so that he will be put on the stage and he will sing these songs. And of course, he becomes an absolute megastar, right? And this utterly mirrors the story in the book, The Memoirs of Billy Shears, of Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots, who's a talented musician, but not going anywhere, thinking about packing it in because he's not going to make a lifetime. He doesn't want to scratch around for a whole lifetime.
Gets this opportunity.
Yeah.
Because how does that be approach him?
Yeah. and even the similarity that it happened through a car crash, because in this circumstance, it's the car crash that takes out the original Paul, that puts this guy into his place. And just as in the film, he is singing songs that were prior to 1966 that were not his songs, as though they are his songs, and no one's noticing, just as in the film. Apart from in the film, the occasional person questions it, and of course that's like thinks, oh, this doesn't quite right. After Paul 2 also was so good that he then produced a whole new lot of work both as and then obviously as a solo artist, and also with Wings, that his music was, if anything, better than the original Beatles, but giving a far more worrying sort of theme, replacing the silly love songs, or basically songs that are promoting LSD. And that was what Paul 2 was brought in to do, was to promote LSD, to break down. These people have been drawn in to, because they think they're clean, they're for them, they're for the people, and all the time they're being drawn into then take drugs, not for their benefit, to be broken down as identities, to become more fragmented from families, to be more isolated. The 60s had, I believe, had some positives involved in this as well, but I also believe it was a significant time of changing people for the ends of where we are now, which is we've got more and more people isolated, living alone, in a sense of loneliness,
breakdown of the family, the reliance on our communities being on the internet, which is obviously not a good thing, because we don't know who the powers are behind the internet,
and suffering from drug addiction. So this was Paul, and some of the changes that occurred that are worth sort of pointing out, because I can if I was to show you photographs of Paul 1, supposedly 66 before and then afterwards, I think you would say that those photos are interesting, but not 100% conclusive. It depends on how you want to view it from the beginning. He looks, there is similarities. There are similarities there, but apparently the actor who is Paul now is between 2 and 3 inches taller than the original Paul. Now, this explains to a certain extent why the Beatles didn't go touring and didn't appear on lots of live TV shows. And you'll also notice that there's very, very little footage post 66, 67 of John Lennon and Paul McCartney, who are, of course, the original partnership, aren't they? They're the original friends from Liverpool, helped form the band, and they had a great relationship and a writing relationship.
Of course, wasn't he rumoured to have said there was a secret in the band?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and when they were at their height, they used to sing. A lot of people, you're too young to remember, you just told me that, but they used to appear together alongside each other on adjoining mics, and you could see therefore that their height, their physical height, was virtually identical.